Amara's hands trembled so violently that the champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered across the marble floor. "Put the veil on," her father hissed, shoving a white wedding gown into her chest. "Your sister ran away, and if you do not walk down that aisle in her place, you will destroy this family." Amara's breath caught. Outside the bridal suite, hundreds of wealthy guests waited beneath golden chandeliers. $1 billion business alliance depended on this wedding, but the bride, her younger sister Zuri, had vanished only 20 minutes before the ceremony. And now the family had chosen their replacement. Not because Amara was loved, because she was expendable. Worse still, the man waiting at the altar was not some prince or politician. It was Khalil, the quiet, poor bodyguard everyone mocked. And as Amara was dragged toward the chapel in tears, she looked up, only to find Khalil staring at her with a strange calmness, as if none of this surprised him at all. "Before we continue, tell me honestly, if your own family forced you to marry someone just to save their reputation, would you obey? Or walk away and let them suffer the consequences? And while you're watching, comment below where you're from and what your local time is right now. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoy emotional, dramatic stories filled with shocking twists and powerful endings, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next one." By the time the forced ceremony ended, Amara no longer felt like a bride. She felt like a hostage, wrapped in lace. The reception hall glittered with gold lights, crystal towers, and imported roses flown in from Europe that same morning. Every table shimmered beneath silver candle holders. Every guest wore wealth-like armor, but to Amara, the entire room looked rotten. Too polished, too bright, too false. She stood beside Khalil as though her body had been placed there by someone else. Guests approached in waves, smiling with poisoned lips. "Such sacrifice," one woman murmured, though the satisfaction in her eyes said something crueler. Another leaned close enough for Amara to smell champagne on her breath. At least the family avoided disgrace. Though I suppose this is still a kind of disgrace. A group of younger women nearby laughed behind jeweled fingers. The older sister always looked desperate. No, not desperate, just available. Imagine ending up with the bodyguard. Maybe that is what happens to girls who wait too long. Each sentence landed like a slap. Amara kept her face still. That was the first thing her father had taught her after her mother died. Never cry where people can enjoy it. So she stood there with her spine straight and her jaw locked, while inside something soft and human kept bleeding. Beside her, Khalil said nothing. That silence bothered her more than the insults. He had barely spoken through the ceremony. Barely reacted when her father shoved legal papers at him, barely blinked when Chief Bode Afolayan introduced him to the crowd with thinly veiled contempt. "This is my son-in-law," Bode had declared, his smile carved from pride and panic. A disciplined young man, loyal, hard-working, a protector. Not a name, not a family, not an identity, only a function. A useful object, yet Khalil had accepted it with an unreadable expression, as if humiliation were weather. As if he had stood in harsher storms. Now, as another insult floated past them, Amara finally turned to him. "Do you enjoy this?" she whispered, without moving her lips. His dark gaze slid to hers. "Enjoy what?" "This." Her throat tightened. Being paraded like a replacement husband for a replacement bride. For the first time that night, something flickered behind his calm eyes. Not anger, not embarrassment. Something older, sharper. "No," he said quietly. "I do not enjoy it." "Then why are you so calm?" He looked ahead again toward the crowd, the chandeliers, the family that had traded one daughter for another, and called it honor, because panic would only entertain the wrong people. That answer unsettled her. It was too precise, too controlled, too unlike the answer of a man with nothing to lose. Before she could press him, Mireille appeared. Her stepmother smelled of expensive perfume and victory. She reached up to adjust Amara's veil, not lovingly but possessively, like a woman tidying a chair before guests sat in it. "Smile," Mireille said through her teeth. "People are watching." Amara jerked her head away. "They watched when you sold me, too." Mireille's face hardened for half a second. Then the social mask returned. "Don't be dramatic. You saved the family." "No," Amara said. "You saved your reputation." Mireille leaned closer. "Listen carefully. Your father's temper is thin tonight, and you know what happens when you embarrass him. Stand there. Smile. Leave with your husband. And be grateful we found some use for you. Some use for you." The sentence struck so deep it almost numbed her. Before Amara could answer, Khalil stepped half a pace forward. It was a small movement, barely noticeable, but it placed his shoulder subtly between Amara and Mireille. "We are leaving soon," he said. Mireille looked at him with immediate disgust. "No one asked you." Khalil held her gaze. "She is tired." The temperature around them seemed to shift. Mireille was not accustomed to resistance from people beneath her, especially not from staff, especially not from a man she considered purchased by circumstance. Her lips curled. "Remember who you are." Khalil's face did not change. "That is exactly what I am doing." Mireille stared at him for 1 second too long, as if something in his tone had touched a nerve she did not understand. Then she laughed lightly, turned away, and glided back into the crowd. Amara exhaled. That was the second time in one evening Khalil had spoken like a man no one could order. Not loudly, not dramatically, just with the weight of someone who had forgotten how to bend. The reception dragged on for another hour. Photos, toasts, empty blessings. Chief Bode gave a speech about family unity while Amara watched his hand shake around the microphone. That caught her attention. Her father did not shake. He roared. He threatened. He controlled. But tonight, beneath the polished voice and tailored agbada, he looked like a man holding together a collapsing wall with one bare hand. She filed that away. A micro crack. A truth hiding under expensive fabric. Then her phone buzzed in her clutch. One message. Unknown number. No, not unknown. She knew exactly who it was before opening it. Zuri. The text had no greeting. "You wear my dress well. Try not to fall in love with my leftovers." Amara stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then another message came. "Relax. I only needed a little freedom. You always were better at carrying the family's burdens. Consider this your gift." A third message followed with a selfie. Zuri in a luxury suite. Bare shoulders, red lipstick, a man's hand visible at her waist. Not Khalil's. Someone richer looking, flashier. The caption beneath the image was short and poisonous. "I chose better." The room around Amara seemed to tilt. Not kidnapped, not in danger, not missing. Zuri had walked away, laughing. Amara closed her eyes for 1 long second. Every humiliation of the day shifted shape. What she had endured was not an accident. It was a deliberate vacancy. A space her sister had left because she believed Amara would always fill it. Amara had spent her life being the cloth shoved into every family crack. She almost crushed the phone in her hand. Khalil noticed. Without asking permission, he held out his palm. She hesitated, then gave him the phone. His eyes moved once across the screen. Nothing more. No visible shock, no outrage. Just a stillness so complete it made her uneasy. "You knew?" she asked. "I suspected." The words hit like cold water. "You suspected my sister had run away." "Yes. And you still stood at that altar." His gaze lifted to hers. So did you. Her breath caught. It was not cruelty. It was truth. Clean and merciless. I had no choice, she said. There is always a choice, he replied. Not in my family. Something in his face darkened. Not at her. At the sentence itself. Before he could answer, Bode strode toward them. Car is ready, he said sharply. Go now. There will be no public farewell. Too many questions. His eyes flicked to the phone in Khalil's hand, then to Amara's face. He knew. Of course he knew. Maybe he had known from the start. Maybe the entire performance had only been about containing fallout until signatures were complete. Amara stepped toward him. You knew she ran away. Bode's nostrils flared. Lower your voice. You knew. I knew she was unstable, he snapped. And I knew our family could not survive scandal today. So you used me. His expression turned cold with the deadly calm Amara had feared since childhood. I preserved what belongs to all of us. No, she said, voice shaking. You preserved yourself. A few guests began to glance over. Bode smiled without warmth. Take your husband and leave before you make this uglier. Amara almost laughed. Uglier. As if ugliness had not begun with him years ago. Khalil touched her elbow lightly. Not controlling, not commanding, only steady. Come, he said. Something in his voice told her this was not surrender. It was timing, so she let him lead her out. They passed through the rear corridor of the hotel where the air smelled less like roses and more like cleaning chemicals and overheated wiring. The service hallway was quiet, honest. No orchestra, no false applause. Only fluorescent lights and scuffed floors. At the final door, Amara stopped. I need to know where you're taking me. To my house. She gave a bitter laugh. Your one-room servants' quarters, no. The answer came simply. No embarrassment, no need to prove anything. He opened the car door for her, and Amara froze again. The vehicle waiting outside was not luxury, but it was not poor either. It was a dark, spotless SUV, with reinforced glass and discreet custom detailing. Too expensive for a bodyguard on a modest salary. Too carefully chosen for a man who wanted to appear small. Amara looked at him slowly. This is your car. It is the car I use, not my employer's car. Not borrowed, not rented. The car I use. Another crack in the story. She got in without another word. The city lights of Lagos slid past the window in blurred rivers of gold and red. They left behind the islands of wealth and moved toward quieter roads, lined with old trees, walled compounds, and the occasional corner vendor shutting down for the night. The farther they drove, the less Amara understood. If Khalil was truly poor, this was the wrong direction. If he was truly only a bodyguard, too many people had saluted him with their eyes that evening. If he was truly ordinary, why did silence seem to obey him? 25 minutes later, the SUV slowed before a modest gated property tucked behind flowering hedges and high cream-colored walls. Not a mansion, not a shack, a clean, elegant middle ground. Security lights came on one by one. The gate opened before Khalil pressed any buzzer. Amara felt her pulse jump. He drove inside. The house ahead was simple, beautiful, and deeply ordered. Warm lights behind wide windows, a trimmed garden, a front step washed clean. No sign of chaos, no sign of poverty, no sign of performance, only restraint. Khalil stepped out first and came around to her side. Amara did not move. She looked at the house, then at him. "Who are you?" she whispered. For the first time that night, Khalil seemed to consider lying. Then he said, "Tonight I am the man your family forced you to marry." It was not an answer, and somehow that made it far more dangerous. Amara did not sleep. The guest room Khalil showed her was larger than the bedroom she had grown up in, yet she moved through it like a trespasser. The sheets smelled faintly of lavender and clean cotton. The wardrobe stood half empty, as if someone had prepared space for her without assuming she would stay. A glass of water waited on the bedside table. So did a neatly folded set of soft clothes in her size. Nothing in that house made sense. Not the order, not the quiet. Not the invisible staff who seemed to exist only at the edges, never intrusive, never careless. And certainly not Khalil. He had left her at the bedroom door with one sentence: "You may lock it." Then he had walked away. No demand, no performance of wounded pride, no drunken claim over a bride he had legally acquired in the ugliest possible way. Just distance. That should have comforted her. Instead, it made her more alert. Men like her father always needed to prove power. Men like Tayo, her arrogant cousin, weaponized charm and volume to fill the emptiness in themselves. Men like Jabari, the kind of man Zuri chased, liked women dazzled, indebted, and dependent. But Khalil moved like a man who had already measured his own power and had no need to display it. That was more frightening. At dawn, Amara gave up on rest and stepped barefoot to the window. Beyond the hedge, Lagos was slowly waking. Distant traffic hummed like restrained thunder. Somewhere nearby, a woman called to a child. Somewhere farther off, a generator coughed to life. Morning rose soft and grey over the compound walls. Then she saw him. Khalil stood in the garden below, already dressed in a plain black shirt and dark trousers. No uniform, no wedding suit. He was on the phone, one hand in his pocket, the other holding the device close. His posture was relaxed, but not casual. Controlled. Listening more than speaking. Amara cracked the window slightly. "No," he said, voice low, "not yet." A pause. I said, "Not yet." Another silence. Then he turned his head very slightly, and though she knew he could not possibly see her through the filtered glass and pale curtains, Amara had the ridiculous feeling he knew exactly where she stood. He ended the call and slipped the phone away. A second later, a woman in a neat head wrap and pale blue uniform stepped into the garden carrying a tray. She stopped at a respectful distance. "Sir," she said. "Sir," Amara pulled back from the window too quickly, heart thudding. "Sir, not ogre, not boss in the casual tone staff used for security men. Sir, with training in it, with formality." She stared at her own reflection in the glass. The man downstairs was either living a lie, or everyone around her had been. By the time she came down, the dining room table had been set for breakfast. Simple white plates, cut fruit, tea, toast, eggs with peppers and onions. No theatrical luxury, no silver domes, no servants hovering. Khalil sat at one end reading something on a tablet. He glanced up as she entered and stood immediately. "Good morning." Amara hated that the courtesy affected her. She nodded careful. "Good morning. You should eat." "Why?" The question slipped out before she could soften it. He set the tablet down. "Because you have not eaten since yesterday afternoon, your blood sugar is probably low and anger feels worse in an empty body." That nearly annoyed her into silence. She sat. For a moment only the clink of cutlery moved between them. Finally she asked, "Who was the woman in the garden?" Khalil buttered a slice of toast with maddening calm. "A housekeeper. She called you, sir. She is polite." Amara's jaw tightened. "Do not do that. Do what? Answer questions with smaller questions." Something almost like amusement touched his face and vanished. "Then ask the exact question you want answered." "Fine. Why does a poor bodyguard live in a house with trained staff, drive an armored SUV, and receive phone calls before sunrise that sound like orders being refused?" Khalil took a sip of tea. "I told you last night who I am." "No," she said sharply. "You told me who you are tonight. The man my family forced me to marry. That is a role, not a truth." He looked at her for a long second. In another man, silence would have felt manipulative. In him, it felt like restraint wrestling with necessity. Before he could answer, her phone rang. Chief Bode. The name alone sent a bolt of old dread through her spine. She almost ignored it. Then survival, trained into her from girlhood, made the choice for her. She answered. "Papa." "Come for lunch," he said without greeting. "Family only." Amara laughed once bitterly. "Since when do not test me this morning?" Her hand tightened around the phone. On the other side of the table, Khalil did not move, but his eyes were on her now. Alert. Measuring. "We already survived your wedding," she said. "What more do you want?" "Your sister's disappearance has created questions," Bode replied. "The family must appear united. Be here at 1. Bring your husband." Then he hung up. No invitation, no apology, only command. Amara lowered the phone slowly. "He wants lunch," she said. Khalil nodded as if he had expected it. "We will go." The certainty in that irritated her. "You do not even know if I want to go." "No," he said. "But I know you want answers." That shut her up because it was true. By 1 o'clock, the Afolayan house was performing elegance again. The mansion stood in its usual imperial arrogance, high gates, polished stone, imported palms, fountains that wasted water purely to display that they could. As a child, Amara had once thought the house beautiful. Now it looked like what it had always been, a monument built to impress outsiders and suffocate those inside. A maid opened the doors before they reached them. When Amara stepped into the foyer beside Khalil, the old feeling returned at once. The need to become smaller. The need to prepare for impact. The need to read every face before breathing too deeply. Mireille appeared first, her wrapper perfectly arranged, her smile carved and brittle. "Amara," she said lightly, kissing the air near her cheek. "You look rested." The word carried accusation, as if peace itself were an act of betrayal. Then her gaze slid to Khalil. She let the pause linger deliberately before saying Khalil. He inclined his head no more. No apology, no eagerness to please. Mireille's eyes narrowed by a fraction. Good, Amara thought with a private flash of satisfaction. Let her be unsettled. They were led to the formal dining room, where Chief Bode sat at the head of the long table, Tayo lounging 2 seats away with his usual polished cruelty. 2 aunties whispered together near the far end, then fell theatrically silent when Amara entered. The room smelled of pepper soup, grilled fish, and old tension. Bode did not rise, so he said, folding his napkin. "The newlyweds arrive." Tayo smirked. "A little less glamorous than planned, but life is full of compromise." Amara remained standing. "If this lunch is for insults, I can leave." Bode's gaze snapped to her. "Sit." Khalil pulled out a chair for her. Again, such a small gesture. Again, it landed heavier than all the grand speeches of wealthy men. Amara sat. Khalil sat beside her. Lunch began with the careful politeness of people hiding knives under linen. Questions about the house, about the drive, about whether Amara was adjusting. Each word floated harmlessly until Tayo decided boredom required blood. "So tell us, cousin," he said, swirling his drink. "How does it feel to wake up married to the family employee?" Mireille made a weak sound of protest she did not mean. One of the aunties pressed her lips together to hide a smile. Amara put down her fork. Before she could answer, Tayo went on. "Actually, that is unfair. Employees are paid. This one married into the benefits package." Laughter flickered around the table. Then Tayo turned to Khalil directly. "You must be very proud. Most men need decades to climb into a house like ours. You managed it with 1 suit and a church aisle." Amara felt heat rise to her face. Shame, old and automatic. the kind that had been forced into her so many times it now moved before thought. But Khalil did not look ashamed. He set his fork down with quiet precision. "Is that how you see houses, Tayo?" he asked. "As places to climb into." The question was mild. The effect was not. Tayo blinked. What a house, Khalil said, reveals the character of the people inside it. Some enter with gratitude, some with greed. Some were born in it and still fail to belong. Silence. Sharp. Instant. Total. One of the aunties lowered her glass too quickly. Mireille's smile vanished. Even Bode looked briefly caught off guard. Tayo let out a laugh that sounded forced. "Be careful. You forget where you are." Khalil met his gaze. "No, I am remembering it clearly." The temperature in the room dropped. Amara stared at him. This was no desperate poor man taking lucky advantage of marriage. This was a man answering insult with the precision of a blade. Not loud enough to seem reckless, not crude enough to be dismissed, just exact enough to wound pride in the place it lived. Bode's voice came low and dangerous. "Tayo, enough." But Tayo had already lost face, and men like him never retreated quietly. He turned toward Amara instead. "Perhaps I should congratulate you. After all these years, you finally found someone willing to take what your sister threw away." That did it. Amara stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. Yet before she could speak, Khalil rose too. Not hurriedly, not threateningly. He simply stood to full height and looked at Tayo with a calm so complete it felt inhuman. "You will apologize," he said. Tayo barked a laugh. "Or what?" Khalil's expression did not shift. "Or you will reveal yourself more fully than you already have." Bode slammed a palm on the table. "This is my house." Khalil turned his head slightly toward him. "Then perhaps your house should learn discipline." The room went still again. Amara felt it then, that strange crack in reality she had sensed at the wedding at breakfast in the garden. Khalil was not brave because he had nothing. He was calm because he feared no one at this table. And suddenly, for the first time in her life, Amara did not feel alone inside the lion's den. She felt something far more dangerous. Protected. The silence after Khalil's words did not feel empty. It felt loaded, like the second before a glass hits the floor. Chief Bode's face darkened first. Not with embarrassment. With rage forced to sit still in expensive clothing. He hated many things: disobedience, humiliation, unpredictability. But above all, he hated losing command of a room inside his own house. And Khalil had just done exactly that. For one stretched second, no one moved. Then Mireille gave a brittle laugh and reached for her water glass, as if the entire exchange had been no more than a small misunderstanding at a civilized table. "Well," she said, voice too bright, "marriage certainly gives men confidence." No one answered. Tayo's mouth hardened. He had expected a quiet retreat, maybe a stammer, maybe a poor man's wounded pride. What he had received instead was something he did not know how to fight: effortless superiority. That was what made cruelty panic. It knew how to bully weakness. It did not know what to do with self-possession. Amara slowly sat back down, though she no longer had any appetite. The soup before her had gone untouched. Her pulse was still too loud in her ears. Khalil resumed his seat with maddening control, as though he had not just turned the family's favorite predator into a blinking fool. Bode cleared his throat. "We are here," he said coldly, "to discuss practical matters." There it was. Not family, not concern. Administration. As if Amara's forced marriage were a scheduling complication. Mireille seized the opening at once. "Yes, now that the ceremony is over, there are appearances to manage, questions to answer, narratives to control. Narratives." Amara almost smiled at the word. In that house, truth had always been treated like an infection. something to be covered quickly before polite company noticed the smell. What narrative, she asked. Mireille gave her a look usually reserved for children asking obvious questions. That the marriage happened as planned. As planned, Amara said. Zuri disappeared. No, Baudet said flatly. Your sister made an emotional mistake. Amara stared at him. You call running away with another man an emotional mistake. I call it irrelevant now. The sentence hung in the air with all the moral rot of a man who had long ago confused power with wisdom. Amara felt her stomach twist. That had always been his gift, making evil sound administrative. Tayo leaned back in his chair. Some of his swagger had returned now that Bode was steering. The guests believed there was a private family adjustment before the ceremony. That is all they need to believe. And the press? Amara asked. We are handling them. The answer came from Mireille this time. Her fingers smoothed the edge of her napkin. A short statement will be released this evening. Zuri was unwell. You stepped in out of love for your family. A moving story, actually. Very noble. Amara let out a laugh before she could stop herself. All eyes turned to her. Noble, she said. You forced me into a wedding dress like I was a spare part. Bode's voice sharpened. Enough. No, Amara said louder now. You do not get to call cruelty noble because you wrapped it in flowers. Tension rippled down the table. One of the aunties looked offended not by what Amara had said, but by the indecency of saying it out loud. That Amara thought bitterly was the family in one image. They could survive betrayal, extortion, humiliation, and emotional abuse. But honesty was vulgar. Bode folded his hands. Listen carefully, he said. The marriage is legal, public, complete. Whether you like how it happened is no longer the point. Amara understood then. This lunch had never been about smoothing scandal. It was about containment. The ceremony was done. The signatures were probably in place. Whatever benefit the family wanted from that marriage, they had secured enough of it to stop pretending they cared about how she felt. Beside her, Khalil was silent again. Too silent. He had intervened when insult crossed a line, but now during this colder, more strategic exchange, he seemed to be listening with deep attention. Not confusion, not helplessness. Attention. He already knew some part of this, Amara thought, or suspected it. The realization made her skin prickle. Then Bode said the next sentence and the room shifted under it. There are documents that will require your cooperation over the next few weeks. Amara went still. What documents? Household asset and marital filings, Mireille said smoothly. Routine things. Khalil finally spoke. Let us see them. The simplicity of the sentence landed like a stone dropped into deep water. Tayo snorted. Since when does a bodyguard read family filings? Khalil did not even look at him. Since they concern my wife. My wife. The words should have sounded possessive. Instead, to Amara's own irritation, they sounded protective. Bode pushed back his chair and rose. Fine. He left the room and returned moments later with a dark leather folder. He placed it at the center of the table, but kept one hand resting over it. Amara noticed that detail immediately. Not generosity. Control. He wanted the gesture of transparency while still signaling ownership. These are preliminary, he said. Mostly formal acknowledgements. Khalil extended his hand. Bode did not move. The air between them hardened. Then very slowly Bode released the folder. Khalil opened it and began reading. Amara watched his face. That was the first time she saw it happen, clearly the smallest change in his expression. Not surprise, not confusion, recognition. His eyes moved once across a page, then again slower. He turned another sheet. Another. Tayo smirked, misreading the silence. Too many big words. Khalil closed the folder softly. No, he said. Too many hidden ones? Amara's heart gave a strange, hard beat. What does that mean? He slid the folder toward her and turned one page open with a fingertip. Clause 17. Her eyes moved over dense legal language. Marriage acknowledgement, mutual protection, temporary spousal confidentiality. Then lower, financial exposure transfer related to named family holdings, pending stabilization of reputational damage. Amara frowned. What is this? Mireille answered too quickly. Standard protective drafting. It does not look standard, Khalil said. Bode's jaw flexed. It is necessary. For whom? Amara asked. No one answered, and that silence told her more than any confession. She flipped back through the pages with growing urgency. Terms, entities, signatories, company references disguised beneath technical language. She had never been trained in corporate law, but she had spent enough years around men like her father to recognize the smell of a trap. This marriage is attached to your business, she said slowly. Everything in this family is attached to the business, Bode replied. No, Amara said, voice thinning with horror. Not attached. Used. Mireille Sarceau leaned in tone, turning silkier, almost coaxing now that anger had failed. Amara, don't make this ugly. These documents simply help keep outside predators from exploiting temporary instability. Temporary instability, Amara repeated. Is that what you call selling your daughter under legal decoration? Tayo muttered. There she goes again. Amara ignored him. She looked at Bode. Truly looked. And for the first time, the trembling hand from the wedding speech, the clipped answers, the frantic insistence on image, all of it aligned. The family was not merely embarrassed. The family was cornered. How bad is it? She asked. No response. How bad? She repeated. Bode's voice dropped. Control your tone. That was his answer. Very bad. Mireille stepped in desperate to preserve shape where truth was already breaking through. Your father is handling matters. With me as collateral, Amara said. Do not use cheap language. Cheap. The laugh that left her then sounded almost broken. You traded me because Zuri ran away. That is enough, Bode snapped. No, she shot back. You do not get enough. You got enough when my mother died and I became unpaid labor in this house. You got enough when you handed every opportunity to Zuri and told me patience was virtue. You got enough when you used my silence like a bank account. You do not get enough from me again. The room seemed to freeze around her, because Amara had never spoken like that before. Not in this house, not in front of witnesses. Her whole life she had swallowed humiliation to survive the day after it. She had learned that truth cost too much when spoken too early. She had learned that being the good daughter meant being the absorbent one, the one who could take in poison without spilling it back. But now the poison was spilling, and once it started, it did not want to stop. Bode's face had gone still in the most dangerous way. Have you finished? Amara rose to her feet. Yes, she said. For the first time in my life, I think I have. Khalil stood too. Tayo did the same, perhaps out of instinct, perhaps because he could feel the center of gravity leaving the table and hated it. You are not walking out on this conversation, Bode said. Watch me, Amara replied. Then before anyone could reposition the scene, before Mireille could cry, before Tayo could mock, before Bode could thunder, Amara turned and walked toward the doors. Her knees felt weak, her throat burned, but she did not stop. Behind her she heard movement, Khalil following. Then Mireille's sharp voice cut across the room. If you leave now, do not expect this family to clean up after you when that man disappoints you. Amara stopped at the threshold and turned halfway back. A year ago, that sentence would have struck fear into her. Today it only revealed the family's final delusion that she still believed they had ever cleaned up anything. All they had done was create the mess, then hand her the broom. She met Mireille's gaze. "You never cleaned up my life," she said. "You dirtied it." Then she walked out. The foyer felt cooler than before. The giant portrait on the wall. Bowed in ceremonial robes, Mireille beside him. Zuri glowing at the front, Amara half-shadowed near the back, suddenly looked obscene, a family portrait built like a confession. Outside, the afternoon heat pressed against her skin. For a second she thought she might be sick. She descended the front steps too fast, needing air distance motion, anything. Khalil caught up to her beside the fountain. "Amara." She turned on him so quickly the force of it surprised them both. "You knew." His face changed by a fraction. "You knew there was something buried in those papers." "I suspected." "There it is again," she snapped. "You always suspect. You always know just enough. You always stay calm while my life burns." The words hit him. Not dramatically, but she saw it. A tightening at the jaw. A flash of something guarded. Good part of her thought. Let him feel a corner of this confusion. She took one step closer. "Who are you really, Khalil?" He held her gaze, and for the first time since she had met him, Amara saw a real hesitation in him. Not because he lacked an answer, because the answer had consequences. Before he could speak, a car engine sounded from the side driveway. Amara turned. A sleek vehicle rolled toward the gate and stopped abruptly. The rear door flew open. A woman stepped out in oversized sunglasses and a cream scarf, trying and failing to look hidden. Even at a distance, Amara knew the shape of her sister's arrogance. Zuri. Alive. Unashamed. Back. Amara felt all the air leave her body, and beside her Khalil went completely still. Not surprised, prepared. That frightened her more than anything. Zuri removed her sunglasses slowly, as if the driveway were a stage, and she had arrived precisely when the audience's attention was hottest. She wore cream linen gold sandals and a face so carefully arranged it could have belonged at a beauty campaign instead of a family disaster. But Amara knew her sister too well. Beneath the flawless lipstick and lifted chin there was strain. Tiny strain. A tightness near the mouth. A faint shadow under one eye. Not ruin, not yet, but the first fingerprints of consequences. Still, Zuri smiled as though she had come home from a vacation. "Well," she said, glancing from Amara to Khalil, then toward the mansion doors, "this is awkward." Amara stared at her. For 24 hours, rage had burned so constantly inside her that she had almost forgotten it could change temperature. But now it did. It sharpened. It cooled. What stood in front of her was not a missing girl, not a victim, not a runaway bride in danger. It was the architect of the insult. "You came back?" Amara said. Zuri shrugged. "Obviously." "Why?" A delicate laugh escaped her. "Because it is still my family home." That sentence landed exactly as Zuri intended, entitled provocative, designed to force everyone else to react first. She had always done that. Throw a small stone, then watch the room scramble around the ripple. Before Amara could answer, the front doors opened behind them. Mireille emerged first, one hand pressed to her chest, in performance-ready shock. Bode followed a second later, his expression changing the moment he saw Zuri. Not relief, not grief. Calculation. Amara noticed that immediately. There were no tears, no running embrace, no father collapsing with joy because his missing daughter had returned alive. Only the hard, rapid assessment of a man whose problem had just walked back into the equation. Zuri saw it too. Her smile flickered. "Papa," she said, voice softening into a childlike note Amara had heard her use since adolescence, whenever she needed rescue. "I can explain." Bode descended the steps slowly. "Can you?" The question was quiet. That made it more dangerous. For the first time since stepping out of the car, Zuri seemed to lose some of her performance. She glanced at Mireille, expecting immediate alliance. Mireille did move toward her then, but not fully. She stopped halfway down the steps, close enough to claim maternal concern, far enough to avoid being consumed by the scandal, physically standing in the driveway. "Where have you been?" Mireille asked. Zuri gave a little exhale, almost offended. "I needed space." Amara laughed. She did not mean to. The sound simply tore out of her. Every eye turned to her. "Space," Amara repeated. "You vanished 20 minutes before your wedding. They forced me into your dress. The entire city is whispering, and you call it needing space." Zuri's face hardened. The softness disappeared. "No one forced you to enjoy it." The cruelty of the sentence was so naked that even Mireille flinched. Amara felt something inside her settle. Not break. Settle, because suddenly there was no confusion left about who Zuri was, no room for nostalgia, no excuse disguised as immaturity. Only the clear outline of a woman who had always believed Amara existed to absorb damage on her behalf. "You think I enjoyed being sacrificed for you?" Amara asked. "I think Zuri said, crossing her arms, that you have always loved pretending you are the suffering saint of this family." Bode's voice cut between them. "Enough." But it was not enough. Not for Amara. Not after a lifetime of swallowing. "No," she said, eyes still on Zuri. "Let her speak. Let her say everything plainly for once." Zuri lifted her chin. "Fine. You want plain, I did not want to marry him." At that, her gaze flicked toward Khalil. Amara noticed it. So did Khalil, though his face did not move. Zuri continued. "I was supposed to marry into power, not into silence. Then Jabari showed me what real freedom could look like." A silence fell after the name. Jabari. So that was the man in the photo. Amara watched Bode's jaw tighten. He knew the name then, or at least knew the type. "And where is Jabari now?" Bode asked. Zuri's mouth pressed thin. A tiny hesitation. A micro crack. Amara saw it and understood at once the dream had already gone wrong. Mireille heard it too. "Where is he?" Zuri looked away for 1 second too long. "It does not matter." "It matters," Bode said, "if you abandoned a high-value marriage for a fraud." The words were brutal, corporate, inhuman. But they exposed his priorities with surgical clarity. Not daughter, not heartbreak. High-value marriage. Zuri heard it, and anger flashed across her face. "You do not get to talk to me about value. You sold me first." The air changed again. Even Amara was startled by that. Mireille went rigid. "Watch your mouth," No, Zuri said, voice rising. "You promised I would be marrying into influence. You told me Khalil was only useful because he was obedient, discreet, and easy to control." "You never said he was?" She stopped. Too late. Amara's pulse kicked hard. Bode moved instantly. "Enough!" But Amara heard the unfinished sentence ringing louder than anything completed. "You never said he was, what important, connected, dangerous, rich?" Amara turned sharply toward Khalil. He was standing exactly where he had been since Zuri arrived. Still, composed. But now stillness looked different on him. Not passive, defensive, like a gate sealed from the inside. Zuri noticed Amara's look and smiled faintly, meanly, sensing blood in the water. "Oh," she said. "He did not tell you," Mireille snapped Zuri. But Zuri was beyond caution now. Humiliation had cracked her, and whenever Zuri cracked, she tried to take everyone down with her. "Interesting," she murmured. "So our brave, honorable Amara married him without knowing." Amara took a step toward her, knowing what Zuri's eyes glittered. And then, unexpectedly, Khalil spoke first. "This is not the place." Amara turned on him. "Then where is the place?" In another car ride, another half answer, Another calm little sentence, while everyone else decides my life for me. He held her gaze, and she saw it again, that measured hesitation, the instinct to protect through withholding. Perhaps once that instinct had been useful to him. Perhaps it had kept him alive. But to a woman whose life had been shaped by family secrets, it felt too much like one more locked door. Zuri laughed softly. There it is. The famous dignity, the mystery, the silence. Tell me, sister, does it make him more attractive when he refuses to answer direct questions? Khalil ignored her entirely, which somehow enraged Zuri more. That had always been her weakness. Attention was oxygen. Indifference was suffocation. She took 2 steps toward him. You should have married me. The boldness of it stunned even Mireille. Zuri, she hissed. But Zuri kept going, reckless now, desperate to reclaim narrative desirability control anything. You were supposed to marry me, she said. I was the one meant for that future. Not her. Amara felt the old wound there, the wound of being measured against Zuri, as if they were products lined on a shelf. But this time the pain did not turn inward. It turned outward into clarity. And yet Amara said quietly, You ran. Zuri swung toward her. Because I thought I had better options. The words hung naked in the afternoon heat. No more disguise, no more family excuses, no more delicate language. Amara nodded slowly. There it is. Bode descended the last step, his patience gone. You will come inside, all of you. Now. No, Amara said. His eyes blazed. What did you say? I said no. The driveway went silent. Bode took 1 step toward her with the old force that had frightened obedience into her bones since childhood. You forget who you are speaking to. For 1 trembling second, the old reflex rose in her. Lower your eyes. Soften your tone. Survive first, feel later. Then Khalil moved. Only 1 step. But it placed him beside her fully. Not in front of her. Not as owner. Not as rescuer. Beside her. I think he said evenly, she remembers exactly. Bode's gaze shifted to him. Stay out of this. No. 1 syllable. No heat, no volume. Just refusal. It was astonishing how much power could live inside calm. Bode looked from Khalil to Amara and seemed for the first time to understand that the old pressure points were failing. Fear was no longer operating on schedule. Shame was no longer doing its usual work. That realization made him more dangerous. Do you think this marriage protects you? He asked Amara. Do you think walking beside a uniformed man makes you untouchable? The insult would have landed yesterday. Today it only made Amara's anger colder. It is not the marriage that changed me, she said. It is finally seeing all of you clearly. For a second no one spoke. Then a sound came from the gate. Another vehicle entering. This one black, understated, expensive, in a way meant not to impress the public, but to move important people quietly. The guard let it through without question. It rolled into the driveway and stopped with controlled precision. 2 men stepped out first. Dark suits, earpieces, the kind of posture that comes from professional threat assessment, not decorative wealth. Then an older man emerged from the rear seat. Grey at the temples, impeccably dressed, no wasted movement. His eyes went first to Khalil, not to Bode, not to the house, not to the scene, to Khalil. And then in full view of the entire family, the older man bowed his head slightly and said, Sir, the board is asking for you. Everything stopped. Amara heard Mireille inhale sharply. Tayo, who had come out onto the steps after hearing the raised voices, went visibly pale. Zuri's lips parted. Chief Bode said nothing at all. Because there are moments when a lie becomes impossible to carry for even 1 more second. Amara turned to Khalil with her heartbeat hammering in her throat. Sir, again, Not a courtesy this time. Recognition, authority, truth reaching the surface, and in the silence that followed, Amara understood only one thing with certainty. The man her family had mocked as a poor bodyguard was standing at the center of a world far larger than any of them had admitted. No one in the driveway moved. It was as if the entire Aphelion household had been struck by invisible lightning and frozen in the exact positions of their last illusion. The older man who had stepped from the black car remained composed, one hand resting lightly over a leather portfolio. He did not repeat himself. Men at his level rarely needed to. The two suited security officers behind him scanned the driveway once, then stood still with disciplined alertness. But none of them mattered. Not really. What mattered was the single word he had used. Sir. Not Mr. Khalil in the polite tone of a hired employee greeting another hired employee. Not boss in the casual language of drivers and guards. Not ogre offered from habit. Sir, as one center of power addresses another. Amara felt the truth before she understood it. Beside her, Khalil's face remained unreadable, but she had lived too long among people who hid their motives behind polished expressions not to notice what shifted. His shoulders locked slightly. His jaw tightened once. Not from fear, from calculation. The older man lowered his voice. I apologize for the interruption. The board meeting was moved forward. They insist. Board. The word landed like a second blow. Tayo recovered first because men like him mistook noise for strength. What bored, he said with a laugh, too loud to be natural. What ridiculous theater is this? No one answered him. That more than anything should have frightened him. Chief Bode took one step forward. Who are you? The older man finally looked at him, and there was no deference in his gaze, not even the fake softness rich men often offered each other in public. Only assessment. My name is Mr. Deme Okonkwo, he said, Chief Legal Counsel to Adeyemi Holdings. Silence. A bird chirped somewhere beyond the compound wall. Water continued spilling uselessly into the fountain. A gardener in the far corner of the property went perfectly still and looked away, sensing by instinct that wealth was colliding with wealth and ordinary people should not appear to witness it. Adeyemi Holdings. The name moved through Amara's memory like a match through dry paper. Not a small company, not an obscure private firm, a financial giant, a multinational empire spread across banking, energy, logistics, real estate, and agricultural infrastructure. The kind of name that appeared in newspapers' investment reports, televised charity galas, political gossip, and whispered resentment. Too large to know intimately. Too powerful to ignore. Amara turned slowly toward Khalil. No, not Khalil, not the version of him she had been given. The man standing beside her. Zuri's lips parted first. No, it came out as barely a breath. Then louder, sharper, more desperate no. That cannot be right. But deep down, perhaps it had already begun to make terrible sense to all of them. The car, the house, the way staff said sir, the phone calls before dawn, the impossible self-control, the insults he never swallowed like a poor man needing permission to stay in the room, but merely allowed to pass by as if beneath reply. Amara's stomach tightened. Mirele spoke next. There must be some confusion. Mr. Okonkwo's expression did not shift. There is no confusion. Bode's eyes narrowed dangerously at Khalil. Explain yourself. Khalil looked at him, and for the first time since Amara had known him, there was not the slightest attempt to appear smaller. Not here, he said. The sentence should have sounded evasive. Instead, in that moment, it sounded like mercy, because public humiliation has temperature. And Khalil, for reasons Amara could not yet understand, was choosing not to turn the heat all the way up in Bode's own driveway. Bode heard the mercy, too. That was why it enraged him. You came into my family under false pretenses. Khalil's gaze sharpened. Did I? The question struck with mathematical accuracy. Because who had lied first? Who had forced a wedding under manipulated circumstances? Who had pushed a daughter into a white dress to protect business interests they had not fully disclosed? Boda's mouth tightened. You presented yourself as a bodyguard. I worked security, Khalil said. That is not the same thing. No, Khalil agreed. It is not. Another silence. Amara realized then that he was not denying anything, but neither was he performing revelation for their benefit. He was allowing them to confront the shape of their own assumptions. That made the truth feel even more severe. Zuri took 2 abrupt steps toward him. You let me believe Khalil cut across her without even raising his voice. I let you reveal yourself. That stopped her. Amara felt it too, the blade under the sentence. He had not deceived them in the same way the family deceived one another. He had occupied a smaller role and watched what they did with the chance to mistreat him. He had tested them by standing where they believed power did not exist, and they had failed. Every one of them. Zuri's face burned with sudden naked humiliation. You were supposed to marry me. The words fell out before she could retrieve her pride. Amara almost laughed at the tragedy of it. Even now Zuri did not say, I wronged you. She said I lost something valuable. Khalil looked at her briefly. No, he said. You were given an opportunity to show who you were. Then he turned away from her. To Amara. Only to Amara, and the difference in his gaze was impossible to miss. Not softness exactly, but attention stripped of all distraction. A man in the center of a revelation, looking only at the one person whose judgment now mattered. We need to leave, he said. Amara did not move. Too many emotions collided at once. Shock, fury, vindication, confusion. A strange, shameful pulse of satisfaction at seeing her family's arrogance collapse under its own blindness. And beneath it all, a deeper wound he had known more from the beginning. Far more. Mireille's voice broke the moment. Amara, don't go with him. The irony was so obscene that Amara nearly choked on it. Yesterday they had forced her into his arms. Today suddenly she required protection from him. She turned slowly toward her stepmother. That is rich. Mireille's eyes flickered with panic. Real panic now, not social discomfort. You do not understand what kind of world this is. No, Amara said. But I understand yours. Bode stepped forward again, all patriarch now trying to recover structure by force. Amara will remain here until this is clarified. Khalil's face cooled several degrees. She will decide where she remains. The legal counsel, Mr. Okonkwo, remained respectfully silent, but Amara saw his eyes shift once between the two men. He was watching something larger than a family argument. He was watching influence reposition itself. Bode noticed it too, and that seemed to wound him more than anything. That outsiders were now witnessing his diminishing command. I am her father, Khalil answered without pause. That title has not served her well. The sentence hit like a public slap. Bode took another step, and instantly the 2 suited security men adjusted their positions. Not aggressively, but enough to show that lines existed. Invisible ones. Expensive ones. Dangerous ones. Amara felt the entire driveway tipping into another version of the same old family violence, men using their bodies to enforce the truth most convenient to them. She was suddenly tired of all of it. Stop. The word came from her sharper than she expected. Everyone looked at her. Amara took a breath. Then another. For the first time since childhood, people were actually waiting to hear what she would say. Not because they loved her, not because they had learned respect, but because the ground beneath all of them had cracked, and she stood in the center of the fracture. I am not staying here, she said. Bode's face darkened. Amara. No. She held up a hand and surprised herself by how steady it looked. You do not call my name like a command anymore. Mireille tried a different angle at once, softer, manipulative. Darling, this is too much to process. Stay tonight. Rest. Let us speak privately in the morning. Amara stared at her. This woman had watched her be humiliated since girlhood, had helped script half the humiliation, had turned every need into obligation and every wound into leverage. And now she wanted privacy. Privacy was where women like Mireille rearranged truth into something survivable for themselves. I have done enough speaking privately in this family, Amara said. Private is where all your lies grew. Tayo, who had been quiet too long to bear it, barked. So what now? She goes off with a billionaire and forgets where she came from. Amara turned toward him, and something in her face finally made him stop smirking. I remember exactly where I came from, she said. That is why leaving is so easy. He had no answer for that. Zuri did, though. Of course she did. She stepped forward, fury overtaking shame. You think you won? Amara looked at her sister and felt for the first time in years something close to pity. Not warm pity, not forgiving pity. The cold pity reserved for people who destroy themselves while trying to steal light from others. This was never a competition, Amara said. To you maybe Zuri snapped. You were always pretending not to want what I had. No, Amara replied quietly. I was trying to survive what you did with it. That landed hard. Because truth sounds different when it is no longer begging to be believed. Zuri's face shifted. For one tiny second, Amara thought she saw something human there. Shame, perhaps, or the first shadow of it. Then it vanished. I want answers, Amara said, turning back to Khalil. You will have them, he said. All of them. Yes. She searched his face. This was the moment, perhaps, when another woman might have chosen fantasy. Wealth had entered the story. Power had been revealed. A softer lie was available now that everything painful would suddenly become meaningful because the man at the center of it was secretly grand. But Amara felt the opposite. His wealth did not erase the confusion. It deepened it. A poor bodyguard could have lied out of helplessness. A powerful man lied out of strategy. And strategy frightened her more. Do not answer me like I'm something fragile, she said. If I get in that car with you, I'm not going as a grateful wife. I'm going as someone who deserves the truth. A small pause. Then Khalil nodded once. Understood. It was such a simple response. No offended pride, no insistence, no charm. Only acceptance. That strangely made Amara trust the next hour more than she trusted the last 24. She stepped toward the black SUV. Behind her, Bode's voice cracked across the driveway one final time. If you leave with him now, do not expect this family to welcome you back. Amara stopped and looked over her shoulder. The old fear did not come. Perhaps because there was nothing left to lose. Perhaps because she had already been cast out many times in smaller ways. Perhaps because once a person sees clearly that a cage is a cage, the threat of its door closing is no longer persuasive. She met her father's eyes. You are mistaking exile for freedom, she said. Then she got into the car. Inside, the leather was cool. The windows darkened the world without hiding it completely. Mr. Okonkwo took the front passenger seat. One security officer entered the second vehicle behind them. Khalil sat beside her in the back. As the gate opened and the Afalayan mansion began to recede behind them, Amara realized her hands were shaking again. Not like at the wedding. Then she had been shaking from powerlessness. Now she was shaking because truth was finally coming. And truth, after a lifetime of secrets, could feel almost violent. For several minutes neither of them spoke. Lagos rolled past in controlled blur. Glass towers, street vendors, traffic lights, construction cranes, laundry lines, a city balancing wealth and survival on the same hot breath. Finally, Amara turned to him. "Say your full name." He looked at her, then answered. "Khalil Adeyemi." She swallowed. "And what exactly are you, Khalil Adeyemi?" A beat passed. Then he said, "I am the acting chairman and principal controlling heir of Adeyemi Holdings." Amara stared at him. The city outside seemed to fall away. Every clue she had collected rearranged itself in an instant. The house, the car, the legal counsel, the guards, the impossible calm, and the terrible, unavoidable question rising behind all of it. If he was really that man, then why had he let her marry him like that? For several seconds after Khalil spoke, Amara could not feel the inside of her own hands. The car was moving. Lagos still existed beyond the tinted glass. Traffic still surged and stalled in uneven waves. Vendors still wove between lanes with bottled water and plantain chips lifted high above the exhaust. Somewhere a siren cried and faded. But inside the SUV, reality had changed shape. Acting chairman, principal controlling heir, Adeyemi Holdings. The words did not sound like a confession. They sounded like an earthquake described politely. Amara turned her head slowly and looked at him as if she might find the lie in his face if she stared hard enough. But that was the problem. Everything she had seen since the wedding now made more sense, not less. The control, the house, the staff. The way danger never seemed to startle him because he had already calculated it. "You're saying this now," she said, her voice lower than she expected, as if it's a piece of biography. "As if it doesn't change everything." "It does change everything," Khalil said. The calm in his tone infuriated her. "Then why do you still sound calm?" His eyes met hers. "Because panic has never repaired damage." That answer might have impressed her yesterday. Today it felt like a polished wall. Amara laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You speak like every powerful man who has ever hidden behind language." Something moved in his expression then. Not anger. Something more difficult. Something like regret sharpened by restraint. "I am not hiding now." "No," she said. "You already hid. This is what comes after." The legal counsel in the front seat, Mr. Okonkwo, kept his gaze respectfully ahead, but Amara knew he could hear every word. She did not care anymore. Dignity had stopped living in privacy a long time ago. "Tell me from the beginning," she said. "Not your version. The truth." Khalil leaned back slightly as if he were choosing not words but sequence. In him, even silence felt organized. "I became acting chairman 8 months ago," he said. "My grandfather founded the holding company. My father expanded it. 2 years ago, my father and older brother died in what was officially described as a highway accident." Amara listened without blinking. Officially, she asked. It was not an accident. The sentence landed with a cold finality that silenced even the sounds of traffic in her mind. She stared at him. "You're sure, yes? How?" His gaze shifted briefly to the window, to the rushing city, to something beyond it, and older than it. "Because I was meant to die with them." Amara felt the air leave her lungs. He went on, still not dramatic, which somehow made it worse. "I changed cars at the last minute. A security concern. A detail so minor no one should have known it in time. But someone did. The brakes in the lead vehicle were tampered with anyway. My father and brother took that route. I did not." Mr. Okonkwo's hands tightened once over the portfolio in his lap. The movement was tiny, but it told Amara 2 things. First, this was all true. Second, the truth still carried weight even among those who worked closest to it. "So you hid," she said. "I reduced visibility," Khalil corrected. The distinction made her jaw tighten. That sounds like a billionaire's way of saying hid. A faint breath escaped him. Not laughter, but not quite not laughter either. Perhaps. That tiny concession irritated her lesser than it should have. She folded her arms. Go on. There were competing interests in and outside the company. Some wanted control. Some wanted access. Some wanted leverage over succession. My grandfather was already ill. The board split into factions. Legal structures were activated quietly. I stepped back in public and moved closer in private. You became a bodyguard. I worked within security channels under a smaller identity. It allowed me to see people without the performance they use around wealth. There it was, the sentence she had been circling since the driveway. A test. A role. A lens. Amara's voice sharpened. So you studied people? Yes. You let people reveal themselves? Yes. You watched my family insult you, mock you, rank you beneath furniture, and you stayed there because it was useful. His jaw flexed. Partly. Partly, she repeated. The word cracked. The first edge of real hurt rose through the shock now, and once it surfaced, it came with the force of old wounds finding a new target. What part was not useful, Khalil? The part where they shoved me into my sister's dress. The part where my father traded me through legal clauses. The part where you stood there already knowing more than I did about my own life. He did not answer immediately. The silence felt dangerous now, not because it threatened her, but because it threatened to make her understand him before she was ready to forgive him. When I agreed to take the assignment, he said, "At last I knew your family had financial exposure. I suspected they were using social alliances to stabilize something bigger. I did not know your sister would run. I did not know they would force you into the ceremony that way." Amara held his gaze. "But once it happened, you stayed." "Yes. Why?" The question sat between them like a knife on a table. Even now, part of her expected strategy. A tactical explanation. Something about optics leverage evidence access. What he said instead was simpler. Because leaving you there would have made me no better than them. Amara looked away first. That was the problem with truth. It rarely arrived clean. It mixed with anger, with contradiction, with things she did not want to feel. Outside, the city began changing. The commercial density thinned. They moved through a corridor of modern towers and private compounds, glass and steel, security barriers, quiet streets lined with trees. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To the tower." "Adeyemi Holdings, yes." The answer sent a fresh current of tension through her. "Why?" "Because if I disappear with you after what happened at the house, the wrong people will move faster. I need you somewhere visible and protected." Again that word without saying it, protected. Amara stared ahead. "You keep making decisions like my safety is a file in your hand." Something passed over his face. "My decisions kept me alive. And did they keep anyone else alive?" The question came out harsher than she intended. But once it was spoken, she did not take it back. Khalil absorbed it without defense. "No," he said. "Only that. No justification. No polished language. No attempt to soften the dead." That honesty changed the atmosphere more than any argument could have. Amara felt it at once. The man beside her was powerful, secretive, and capable of strategic deception. But he was not numb. Whatever armor he wore, it had been built after loss, not instead of it. She pressed her palm against the cool leather seat and forced her breathing to slow. "Tell me where my family fits into this." His eyes narrowed slightly, not at her, but at the question. "We're still confirming full involvement, but several shell partnerships linked to a distressed infrastructure fund intersected with entities your father signed on to 18 months ago." Amara blinked. "English." Mr. Okonkwo spoke gently from the front without turning around. Your father joined a group of investors who were moving money through layered companies. Some of those companies touched roots and contracts later associated with the people who benefited from the succession chaos inside Adeyemi Holdings. Amara stared at the back of his head. Are you saying my father helped kill your family? No, Khalil said immediately. I am saying your father may have done business with men who profited from my family's collapse. The distinction mattered, but not enough. She shut her eyes for one long second. This was no longer a cruel wedding story. It was an ecosystem of greed. A father desperate enough to barter his daughter. A sister vain enough to chase a brighter promise. A powerful man hidden in plain sight to identify enemies. And somewhere beneath all of it, an old crime still bleeding through new arrangements. Her phone vibrated. She ignored it. It vibrated again. Zuri. Of course. Amara stared at the name and nearly declined the call out of instinct. But then another instinct rose, stronger enough shadows, enough indirect truth. She answered and put the phone on speaker. Zuri's voice came in fast, strained. Where are you? That's a very bold question for someone who disappeared. Don't do this right now. Interesting, Amara said. You had no problem doing things right now yesterday. A short silence. Then Zuri lowered her voice. Listen to me. You don't understand, Khalil. Amara's eyes went to him at once. He did not move. Something in that stillness made her spine tighten. Then explain him, she said. Another silence. When Zuri spoke again, the edge in her voice had changed. Less arrogance, more fear. Jabari knew who he was. Amara felt the world narrow. What he knew, Zuri said. That's why he came near me in the first place. He said the Adeyemi name had gone underground, that the air was moving without headlines that people were searching for, where the power had gone. I thought he was lying. I thought he was just making himself sound connected. Amara's fingers curled around the phone. Khalil's face changed at last. Only slightly. But enough. A real reaction. Where is Jabari now? Khalil asked. Zuri hesitated. I don't know. Zuri. The way he said her name made even Amara feel the pressure in it. I swear, Zuri said. He disappeared this morning. After the story started spreading, he took calls outside, got nervous, and left. He thought something had gone wrong. Amara's pulse spiked. You came back because he abandoned you. No, Zuri shot back too fast. Then softer. Not only because of that. That was the closest thing to shame Amara had ever heard from her sister. But the real danger was elsewhere now. Khalil's phone lit up in his hand. He checked the screen, and this time he answered immediately. Yes. He listened for 5 seconds. The atmosphere in the car changed so fast, Amara felt it like a temperature drop. When he asked, another pause. His jaw hardened. Lock down the East Records floor. No one leaves until internal audit arrives. He ended the call. Amara's throat tightened. What happened? Khalil looked at her. Someone entered a restricted archive inside the tower 12 minutes ago using a cloned executive credential. The car took a sharp turn toward a rising glass structure ahead. Adeyemi Tower. Khalil's voice had gone colder now. Faster, more dangerous. They've started moving. Adeyemi Tower rose above the Lagos skyline like a blade of dark glass. Even from the road, it did not look like a company building. It looked like a decision made permanent. 40 stories of steel mirrored panels and quiet intimidation stood against the late afternoon haze while traffic bent around its private entry lane. A low ring of controlled landscaping separated it from the city's noise. Water moved in clean geometric lines over black stone. Security posts blended into the architecture so perfectly that the danger of them felt intentional. Amara had seen the tower before in magazines, on business news, in the background of stories about mergers and infrastructure expansions and philanthropic funds with names she never remembered. But seeing it from inside Khalil's car was different, because towers, she realized, were like powerful families. From a distance they looked elegant. Up close they were built to keep certain truths inside. The SUV passed through 2 separate gates without stopping. No one checked Khalil's face. No one asked his name. The barriers simply opened. That told Amara more than any introduction could have. Inside the underground access level, cars were positioned with military neatness. Men in discreet suits moved with the alert speed of people already managing a problem they had not yet named aloud. Khalil got out first. Mr. Okonkwo stepped aside to clear the rear door for Amara, not as a servant, not as a social courtesy, but with formal recognition. Recognition of who she now was in relation to the man they served. Amara hated that the gesture made her uncomfortable. She did not want borrowed status. She wanted answers. As soon as she stepped out, Khalil turned to one of the security officers. "Where is Musa 34th floor, sir? Internal security sweep in progress." "Sir," again. Still calm, still unquestioned. Amara walked beside him toward a private elevator bank hidden behind matte black panels. The doors opened before he touched anything. "You built your life on not telling the full truth, didn't you?" she asked quietly as they entered. Khalil pressed his thumb to an invisible scanner. "No. I built it on telling the truth to the right people at the right time." She almost laughed. "That sounds noble only when powerful men say it." A small pause. Then, to her surprise, he said, "It may sound worse from where you stand." That answer disarmed her for half a second, because it was not defensive. It was accurate. The elevator rose in near silence, smooth and fast enough to make the city outside seem unreal. Amara watched the numbers climb and became aware once again of how her body responded around Khalil. Not with ease, not with trust, but with a strange combination of vigilance and unwilling attention. He did not fill space the way arrogant men did. He altered it. That was harder to resist. When the doors opened on the 34th floor, the temperature seemed colder, not physically, socially. People were working, but not normally. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as Khalil stepped out. Analysts at glass desks stood straighter. 2 assistants carrying files moved instantly aside. A woman in a navy suit at the far end placed her phone down and lowered her eyes. No announcement had been made. He did not need one. Authority moved ahead of him like weather. At the end of the corridor, a broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair was standing beside a sealed glass door, speaking to 2 internal security officers. He turned at once. Khalil. This was the first person Amara had seen use his name without title or hesitation. There was history in it. Musa, Khalil replied. Musa's eyes flicked to Amara, taking her in quickly, not rudely, not dismissively, just efficiently. Then he nodded once, respectful but not ceremonial. "Ma'am." Amara inclined her head but said nothing. Musa turned back to Khalil. The breach was limited to archive segment E-12, credential clone as reported. Accessed at 4:07 p.m. Exit at 4:11. 4-minute window. Footage pulled and isolated. We have 1 visible operative and 1 shadow outside frame. Musa handed over a tablet. "But that isn't the part you'll like." Khalil read something on screen, and for the first time since entering the building, a hard stillness spread through him so visibly that even Amara felt it. What she asked. He tilted the tablet toward her. A security still. Grainy time-stamped. A man in a cap and maintenance uniform entering the restricted archive corridor. Amara stared, not because she recognized the face directly, because she recognized the eyes, the same predatory brightness from Zuri's photo, Jabari. Her stomach dropped. That's him, she said. Musa looked at her sharply. You know this man. My sister ran away with him. That sentence changed the room, not loudly, not dramatically, but every nearby person seemed to hear danger reclassify itself. Musa took the tablet back. Then he wasn't fishing blind. No, Khalil said. He was directed. Amara turned to him. By who? He met her eyes. That is the question. Rage began building in her chest again, quick and hot. Not the helpless rage of the wedding. A cleaner one. More useful. He used Zuri to get close to your name, she said. He let her think she was special. Musa's face did not soften, but something in it recognized the brutality of that. Likely. Amara felt sick. Zuri had been cruel, selfish, reckless, vain. All true, but exploitation was still exploitation, even when the victim had walked toward it proudly. Jabari had baited her with fantasy because she was easy to bait, and through her, he had brushed dangerously close to something far bigger than she understood, which meant the family disaster had not just been humiliating, it had been useful to someone. Khalil handed the tablet back. What did he access? Musa hesitated. Say it. Old succession records, legacy transport routes, insurance litigation, some restricted files related to the crash. The word sat heavily between them. Crash. Not accident, not incident, crash. Amara folded her arms tightly over herself. He was looking for proof. Or for what proof we already have. Khalil said. Musa added, The archive includes internal correspondence from the months before your father and brother died. Some of it was digitized after the first forensic review. Amara looked from one man to the other. And someone thinks those files can hurt them. Khalil's eyes remained on the sealed archive doors. Someone knows they can. For a second, no one spoke. Then the full size of it hit Amara. The wedding, Zuri's disappearance, Jabari's sudden interest, the cloned credential, her father's hidden legal clauses. All of it was not one story. It was several stories colliding around the same secret, and somehow she had become the point where they overlapped. Musa gestured toward a nearby office. There's more, not for the floor. Khalil nodded, then turned to Amara. Come with us. She bristled instantly. Stop saying it like I'm a package being transferred. A flicker passed through Musa's expression. He was smart enough to understand there had been a larger emotional explosion before he entered the day's events. Khalil, to his credit, did not react defensively. Then walk because you choose to, he said. The answer annoyed her less than expected. They entered a private conference room walled in smart glass that dimmed to opacity the moment the door shut. Lagos disappeared behind grey shadow. The room itself was minimalist and severe, long black table recessed, lighting a screen built flush into one wall, no decorative clutter. Musa remained standing. Mr. Okonkwo joined them a minute later with 2 folders and a slim encrypted drive. Amara looked at all of them. This was not a husband bringing a confused wife into his office to reassure her with softened explanations. This was a war room, and they had stopped pretending otherwise. Musa placed one folder on the table and slid it toward Amara. You asked where your father fits, he said. This is the first layer. Amara opened it. Transaction summaries, entity charts, corporate names linked by lines and percentages. Some she recognized from dinners where Bode had name-dropped investors to inflate his importance. Others meant nothing to her. One name appeared 3 times. Afolayan Civic Logistics Consortium. Her breath slowed. That's his vehicle, she said quietly. The one he used after the construction losses 2 years ago. Mr. Okonkwo nodded. It intersected indirectly with 2 shell vendors later traced to offshore holding structures connected to men under review after the crash. Indirectly, Amara repeated. You keep using that word. Because precision matters, Khalil said. If your father knowingly financed the people who targeted my family, that is one kind of crime. If he bought into a network built by them while pretending not to know, that is another. Amara looked up sharply. And which do you believe? Khalil did not answer immediately. That told her enough. Not certainty. Suspicion. Dangerous suspicion. She turned another page, then froze. There, clipped into the back of the folder, was a copy of a legal memorandum. A recent one, dated just 3 weeks ago. She scanned the header and felt ice spread through her. Why is my marriage listed here? The room went still. Khalil stepped closer. Musa swore softly under his breath. Amara's eyes flew down the page. Contingency marital stabilization event. Reputational shield. Transfer exposure buffer through bonded household union. It was the same language from the family papers, but cleaner here. More direct. Corporate translation of personal betrayal. She looked up. You knew. Khalil's face hardened, not at her, but at the document. I knew there was a possible attempt to use a social alliance structure, he said. I did not know they had already drafted it around you specifically. That is not the same thing as no. No, he said. Something in Amara snapped into anger so fast it made her dizzy. She shoved the folder closed. So while I was being dragged into a wedding dress somewhere in this building, men were already discussing my life as a stabilization event. No one answered. Because yes, maybe not in that exact room, maybe not by that exact table, but yes. The pain of that truth was different from her family's cruelty. Family cruelty was old, familiar, predictable. It came from the people who had trained her to expect less. This was worse, because this came from the man who had looked at her gently, who had stood beside her, who had answered insult like she mattered, and yet somewhere before feeling anything for her, he had allowed her existence to enter a strategic equation. She stood so abruptly that the chair legs scraped hard against the floor. I need air, Amara Khalil began. She turned on him, eyes blazing. No. Not one more careful sentence until you understand this. Her voice shook, but it did not weaken. My father sold me because he thought I was expendable. If you ever saw even 1 second of that as useful, then you do not get to stand there and tell me you protected me. The words hit cleanly. Musa looked away. Mr. Okonkwo lowered his eyes. And for the first time since the truth began surfacing, Khalil looked like a man who had miscalculated something that mattered more than a company. Amara took 1 step back from the table, then another. Then the door burst open. A young analyst stood there, pale and breathless, tablet in hand. Sir, she said to Khalil, you need to see this now. No one moved. The analyst swallowed. It's the media team. Someone leaked the wedding footage. Amara went cold. The analyst turned the screen toward them. There it was, her on the bridal corridor, trembling, cornered, white dress pressed into her hands. A headline already racing across local news feeds, heir's secret wedding, tied to distressed deal family forced bride scandal explodes. The room shifted from private crisis to public war in a single breath. And Amara understood instantly whatever happened next would no longer stay inside families' boardrooms or sealed archives. The whole city was about to watch them burn. Couple of seconds, for 1 terrible second, no one in the conference room breathed. The young analyst stood frozen at the door tablet still lifted in both hands while the headline pulsed across the screen like an accusation the city had been waiting to make. Heir's secret wedding, tied to distressed deal family forced bride scandal explodes. Beneath it, the video thumbnail showed Amara exactly as she had felt in that moment. Not beautiful, not bridal, cornered. White silk pressed against her body like evidence. A man's hand, her father's, caught mid-motion near her arm. A fragment of her face turned toward the chapel doors, with terror so clear no public statement could smooth it into romance. Amara's stomach clenched. This, she thought, was the final cruelty of scandal. First they violate you, then they circulate the violation as content. Musa crossed the room and took the tablet from the analyst. Where did it hit first? 3 entertainment blogs, 2 political rumor accounts, then a finance channel picked it up because of the Adeyemi name. It's spreading fast. How much of the footage? Only 43 seconds for now. Enough. Enough. That word carried more truth than anything else in the room. Because yes, 43 seconds was enough to destroy every soft lie the Aphelions had planned. Enough to turn whispers into certainty. Enough to make viewers take sides before facts arrived. Enough to make every predator in the media smell blood. Amara did not look at the screen again. She looked at Khalil. He had gone very still. Not stunned, not flustered. Dangerous. The kind of stillness that appears when a powerful man stops reacting and starts calculating damage routes, pressure points, vulnerabilities. For the first time, she hated that stillness, because the wound in her was still personal, and the room had already become strategic. "Say it," she said. His eyes moved to her. "Say what?" "That this is useful too." A shadow crossed his face. "Amara, no!" Her voice sharpened. "Do not soften your tone and think that changes anything. My humiliation is public now. My family used me privately. Your world will use me publicly. So say it plainly. Is this useful?" The room went quiet in a different way now. Not because of the leak, because everyone inside it understood that the real fracture was standing in front of them. Khalil took one step toward her. "It is not useful to me," he said. "It is dangerous. Dangerous to your company. Dangerous to you." Amara let out a short, strained laugh. "That answer would matter more if you had told me the truth before the internet did." The sentence landed. He accepted it. No defense, no correction. Outside the smart glass walls, the office floor was already changing tempo. Assistants were moving faster. Phones were being answered on the first ring. Somewhere someone began issuing media instructions in clipped professional language. The machine was waking, and Amara understood with a fresh wave of disgust that no matter how shaken the human heart was, institutions always knew what to do first. Contain, frame, redirect. Musa set the tablet on the table. "There's more." Of course there was. "There's a second clip circulating," he said. "Reception footage. Audio enhanced." Amara went cold all over again. What audio? Musa hesitated. That hesitation told her enough. "Play it." Amara Khalil began. "Play it." Musa touched the screen. The room filled with the brittle noise of clinking glasses, soft music, and wealthy voices pretending to celebrate something rotten. Then one sentence rose clearly over the background, cleaned by whatever account had sharpened it for impact. At least the family avoided disgrace. "Though I suppose this is still a kind of disgrace." Another voice followed. "Imagine ending up with the Bodyguard." Then faint but unmistakable Mireille's voice. "Be grateful we found some use for you." Amara closed her eyes. That sentence. She had survived hearing it once. Hearing it again in a room full of strangers was different. It felt like being undressed by memory. When she opened her eyes, Musa had already stopped the clip. No one spoke. The analyst at the door looked like she wanted to disappear through the floor. Mr. Okonkwo removed his glasses and cleaned them with a cloth that did not need cleaning. A small gesture, but one Amara now recognized as controlled distress. Khalil's jaw was locked so hard that a pulse moved near his temple. The public had not just seen a scandal. They had heard a family confess its cruelty in its own language. For one ugly second part of Amara wanted to break. to cry, to sit down and let the weight of it crush her, because at least that would be honest. But another part rose faster, hotter, cleaner. No. If the world was going to look, then let it look at the truth. Her phone began vibrating on the table, then ringing, then vibrating again. The screen filled with missed calls and incoming names. Unknown journalists, distant relatives, an aunt who had not spoken to her in 2 years. Zuri Mireille. Zuri again. Boded then more unknown numbers. The city had arrived. Amara stared at the flashing screen and felt strangely a new calm move through her. Not peace. Not yet. But a hard-edged clarity. Her whole life other people had narrated her pain for her, explained it away, reframed it, buried it, used it, turned it into sacrifice, duty, patience, maturity, family, loyalty. Now her pain had escaped their control. That was terrifying, but it was also dangerous for them. Musa's phone buzzed. He read the message and muttered a curse. What? The Alpha Lions are already issuing a statement, he said. They're saying the clip was selectively edited, and that Amara volunteered to replace her sister out of love. Amara actually smiled. A small, cold, disbelieving smile. Of course they are. Khalil looked at her. That can be challenged. Not challenged, she said. Destroyed. Every eye in the room shifted to her. For the first time since entering the tower, Amara felt all of their attention not as pressure, but as space. Space to choose. Space to speak. Space she had never been given inside her father's house. She reached for the tablet. Musa handed it to her carefully. Amara stared at the frozen image of herself in white silk eyes full of panic. Then she looked up. I want a copy of everything. Khalil's gaze sharpened. Amara. Everything, she repeated. The bridal corridor footage, the reception audio, the filing with my name in it, the marriage clause language, all of it. Mr. Okonkwo spoke carefully. That will have legal consequences. She turned to him. Good. He paused, then inclined his head slightly. Because the truth, once a woman stops fearing its cost, becomes very difficult to manage. Khalil stepped closer, lowering his voice. You do not have to decide this in anger. She met his eyes. No. I'm deciding it in clarity. Something changed in his face at that. Not resistance, recognition. He was beginning perhaps to understand the part he had misjudged. Not her intelligence, not her strength, her threshold. He had probably expected grief first, withdrawal, confusion, time. What he had forgotten was this: women raised inside cruelty learn to identify the exact moment fear stops being useful. And once that moment comes, they become hard to silence. Amara set the tablet down. I'm done being the person everyone arranges around. The words were simple. The room absorbed them like truth usually gets absorbed quietly first, then completely. Musa turned toward Khalil. The media team wants direction in 5 minutes. Khalil did not answer immediately. His eyes remained on Amara, and in that look for the first time there was no strategy, no soft management, no careful withholding, only attention stripped raw by consequence. Finally he said, She leads on this. The analyst blinked. Mr. Okonkwo looked briefly surprised. Musa's expression did not change, but respect moved under it. Amara felt something in her chest shift. He should have done that earlier, she thought. Much earlier. But he was doing it now. And sometimes a late truth still matters if it costs the speaker something to tell it. Her phone rang again. Zuri. This time Amara answered. She put the call on speaker without warning. Zuri's voice came in, fast, breathless, furious. What did you do? Amara almost laughed at the question. What did I do? The media is saying I ran away. They're using my name. They're calling me selfish, shallow, reckless. They're accurate. A sharp inhale on the other end. You always wanted this, Zuri hissed. You always wanted people to pity you. Amara felt the old wound there again. The lie Zuri had built her entire life around, that suffering was a kind of theft, that attention paid to pain was unfair competition. No, Amara said quietly. I wanted one day of not being used. Zuri fell silent. Then came the real reason for the call. Listen to me, she said. Jabari has people. Dangerous people. He told me if things got messy, your husband would turn everyone into collateral. He said men like Khalil protect themselves first. The room tightened. Amara's eyes went to Khalil at once. He did not move, but Musa did very slightly, the way trained men do when a threat shifts from rumor to relevance. Where is Jabari now? Khalil asked. I told you I don't know. Then think harder, Musa said, stepping toward the phone on instinct. Zuri snapped. Don't talk to me like I'm one of your staff. Amara's voice cut through the room. Zuri. A pause. When Amara spoke again, her tone had changed. It was no longer wounded sister to reckless sister. It was something colder, more adult. If you know where he is and you stay loyal to him now, then whatever happens next belongs to you too. The sentence hit, because for the first time in their lives, Amara was not pleading for decency. She was naming consequence. Zuri's breathing changed on the line. Fear, Amara realized, often sounded just like anger until you learned the difference. He used me, Zuri said, and this time the glamour was gone. The performance was gone. What remained was ugly and human and late. He said your wedding would open things. He said once the family got desperate documents would move. That people always made mistakes when trying to hide shame. Musa and Khalil exchanged one quick look. Documents would move. So Jabari had anticipated the marriage fallout, which meant someone had known the wedding structure before the wedding itself. Amara's pulse spiked. Who told him, she asked. On the other end, Zuri hesitated. Too long. And then very softly she said, I think Papa met him once. Silence detonated in the room. Not loud, not messy. Worse. The kind of silence that comes when suspicion stops being theory and starts choosing shape. Amara went still. Bowed, not just entangled through business, possibly directly connected. Her father's face flashed in her mind at the table. The shaking hand at the wedding, the rage, the legal papers, the need to force everything through before someone could stop it. Not panic over scandal, panic over timing. Khalil's phone lit up again. Musa checked his own at the same instant. Both men looked down. Both faces changed. What Amara demanded. Musa lifted his head first. The board isn't waiting anymore. Khalil answered the unfinished sentence. They've called an emergency session. He looked at Amara. And someone has formally challenged my authority. Ketithuk PH9. TPTC Guvai TD 1000 to 1200. Theoquidnh. Thought for 4 seconds. PHN10. The emergency board session was called for 6:30 p.m. By 6:12, the 39th floor of Adeyemi Tower looked less like a corporate headquarters and more like the polished interior of a battlefield. Assistants moved in fast lines with sealed folders. Legal staff updated tablets at standing desks outside the board chamber. A crisis communications team occupied a side room monitoring financial channels, local media investor chatter, and the exploding wedding scandal across every screen. Security had doubled in the elevator banks. No one smiled. No one wasted words. Amara stood near the glass wall of a private holding room and watched Lagos burn gold under the setting sun. The city looked beautiful from above. Distance always beautified things. Distance softened roofs, erased potholes, blurred hunger, and made even corruption look elegant behind glass. That, she thought, was how powerful families survived for so long. They forced enough distance between themselves and the damage they caused that the damage stopped looking human. Behind her, Khalil was reading the formal challenge memo in silence. Musa stood beside the conference table, arms folded, while Mr. Okonkwo briefed two senior attorneys in clipped phrases too fast for anyone outside the room to fully follow. Procedural ambush, credibility leverage, narrative destabilization tied to marital scandal. If Nwosu and Bamidele combine proxy blocks, they don't need to win the vote outright, only force temporary suspension, unless we cut the moral argument off at the root. Moral argument. Amara turned. That was the part that interested her. Not because the board cared about morality. She doubted it. Men in rooms like that usually cared about exposure, liability, and control. Morality only became fashionable when it threatened stock value. Still, the phrase mattered. Because someone inside Khalil's world had decided that the fastest way to weaken him was not by attacking his business strategy. It was by attacking the story around him. Secret heir, forced bride, distressed family, potentially manipulated marriage. If they could make him look morally compromised, they could make power nervous. And nervous power loved procedure more than loyalty. Khalil looked up from the memo. They'll ask whether I knowingly allowed a coercive marital arrangement while conducting internal succession protection. Amara held his gaze. And did you? The room went still, not because they had never considered the question, because she had asked it without legal padding. Khalil placed the document down carefully. I knew your family intended to use marriage as reputational insulation. I did not know it would be you until that day. Once it became you, I chose to proceed, because walking away would have left you inside their control and erased any chance of exposing what they were doing. That is not a clean answer, Amara said. No, he replied. It isn't. Mr. Okonkwo dismissed the attorneys with a glance. They left at once, closing the door behind them. For a few seconds, only the four of them remained. Musa exhaled once. It may not be clean, but it is defendable if framed correctly. Amara looked at him. You mean survivable? He did not deny it. There's a difference, she said quietly, between surviving the truth and telling it. Musa's expression changed by a fraction. He understood that he had just been corrected by the one person in the room who had lost the most and still had the least reason to protect anyone. Good, Amara thought. Let them all feel that discomfort. Her phone vibrated on the table. This time it was not Zuri. It was Chief Bode. She stared at the screen for 3 seconds, then answered and put him on speaker without warning. His voice arrived sharp, furious, and already sweating control. Where are you? Amara almost smiled. No concern, no apology, no daughter, only location. At the place you should have expected, she said. Do not play games with me. You started the game. Bode inhaled through his nose. She could hear it. That small sound of a man fighting the urge to roar because he no longer knew who might be listening. Listen carefully, he said. Whatever you think you know, you are being used. Amara looked at Khalil while answering. That would mean more if it weren't coming from the man who literally used me. Silence on the line. Then Bode switched tactics. Come home. It was almost laughable. Home. The word had never been more dishonest in her life. No. Amara. There was warning in her name again. The old pressure. The old father tone. The old confidence that fear would do what love never had. But fear had changed addresses. No, she repeated. And stop saying my name like a command. His voice dropped. If you stand with that man in public, you will destroy what is left of this family. Amara's eyes hardened. No. The family was destroyed long before I stood anywhere. Bode's breath came rougher now. He was cornered. She could hear it. Cornered men became dangerous because they stopped caring what they sounded like. "This is bigger than sentiment," he snapped. "You have no idea who is involved." At that, everyone in the room shifted. Khalil's gaze sharpened instantly. Amara leaned closer to the phone. "Then explain it." A pause. Too long. When Bode spoke again, the threat was almost visible inside his voice. "Leave the tower tonight. Walk away from Adeyemi. Say you were pressured. Say the footage was manipulated. Say whatever is necessary. If you don't, there are men who will not stop at scandal." There it was. Not a father protecting his daughter. A conspirator warning a witness. Musa was already writing something on a legal pad, fast and hard. Mr. Okonkwo had opened a recording interface on his phone without saying a word. Amara felt cold settle all the way down her spine. "You know them," she said. Bode did not answer. "You know exactly who they are." Still nothing. Then very softly, like a truth escaping before strategy could catch it, he said, "I borrowed from the wrong network." The room changed. Everything that had been suspicion now found bone. Amara shut her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, Khalil was no longer looking at the floor, the documents, or the legal team. He was looking only at the phone, only at the voice of the man who had bartered his daughter and entered business with predators. "How much?" Khalil asked. Bode went silent. "Chief Afolayan Mr. Okonkwo said in a voice suddenly formal enough to cut glass for your own legal interest, you should be very careful what you say next." But Bode was past care now. "Enough," he spat. "Enough to keep the company standing. Enough to keep creditors off my neck. Enough to stop vultures from tearing everything apart after the port contracts failed. They said it was temporary. They said all they needed was access social cover movement around the wedding week, a few document opportunities." Amara's breath caught. Wedding week. Not just money. Operational timing. The marriage had not only hidden family shame, it had created chaos useful to other men. "You sold us all," she whispered. Bode barked back with sudden rage because exposed men often run toward cruelty, as if it can still shield them. "I saved what I built." "No," Amara said, voice shaking now. "You fed us into it." The line went dead. Silence held for 1 stunned second after the call ended. Then the room moved all at once. Musa was already on his phone. "Pull every Afolayan logistics file. Freeze external visitor permissions tied to the wedding week. Cross-reference with archived access anomalies." Mr. Okonkwo turned to Khalil. "That recording is enough to destroy any fiction of innocent distance." Khalil nodded once. "It's enough." Amara stood perfectly still. She should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt something sadder. The final death of hope. Not hope that her father loved her. That had died years ago in smaller ways. But hope that somewhere inside his greed there had still been a line he would not cross. There had not. A quiet knock sounded. An assistant opened the door. "Sir, the board is seated." Khalil looked at Amara. This time there was no strategy in his face. Only the clear knowledge that the next 5 minutes might cost him everything, and that the one person he could not afford to command was the one standing in front of him. "You don't owe me this," he said. The honesty of the sentence hit harder than any plea could have. No stand by me. No trust me. No I did it for you. Just you don't owe me this. Amara felt the weight of every part of the story settle inside her at once. The bridal corridor, the family table, the driveway, the archive breach, the leaked humiliation, the legal clauses, the half-truths, the real dangers, and beneath all of it, one thing harder than rage. He had misjudged her, yes. He had concealed too much, yes. But when it mattered most, he had never treated her pain as something to mock, minimize, or buy. Her father had. Her stepmother had. Zuri had. Khalil had treated it as if it mattered too late, imperfectly, strategically at first, but truly. And now the decision was hers. For the first time in her life, fully hers. "Open the doors," she said. The board chamber was enormous without trying to be grand. Dark wood, long table, layered screens. City view behind one wall of glass, now dimmed against the evening sky. Men and women in tailored restraint turned as one when Khalil entered. Then turned again when Amara walked in beside him. Not behind him. Beside him. Murmurs moved instantly through the room. She recognized one face from television interviews, another from business magazine covers, a third from a charity gala her father had once attended and bragged about for months. Power-seated and pretending calm. At the far end, a silver-haired director with careful eyes spoke first. "Mr. Adeyemi, before this session proceeds, the board requires clarity regarding the scandal currently endangering the company's reputation." Amara almost admired the sentence. So elegant, so sterile, as if what had happened were not violence dressed as ceremony. Khalil remained standing. "You'll have it." But before he could continue, a heavier man to the right leaned forward. "Did you knowingly enter a coercive marriage arrangement while concealing material facts from this board?" There it was. No more cushioning. Khalil was about to answer when Amara spoke first. "Yes," she said. Every face in the room turned. Khalil went still beside her. Amara stepped forward one pace. "Yes," she said again. Material facts were concealed. But not only by him. The room quieted. When she continued, her voice did not tremble. "My name is Amara Afolayan Adeyemi. I was forced into that marriage after my sister ran away. My father used me to protect his collapsing business image. My stepmother helped him. The public footage is real. The audio is real. The coercion was real. No one interrupted. No one breathed loudly enough to be heard. Now hear the rest," she said. "The men who benefited from my father's financial desperation also benefited from the confusion around that wedding. Documents were moved. Access was sought. Hidden networks used family shame as operational cover. If you are looking for moral rot in this story, do not look only at the man standing beside me. Look at the people who built their wealth by feeding daughters into deals and calling it necessity." The boardroom had gone utterly still. This was not a PR defense. This was judgment. Amara turned slightly toward the silver-haired director. "You want to know whether Khalil Adeyemi is fit to lead?" she asked. "Then ask a harder question. When powerful men had the chance to use a frightened woman for convenience, which of them did, and which of them are willing to put the truth on the record now, even if it costs them?" The silence after that was different, not empty, decisive, because the room had just been forced out of procedural language and into moral exposure. Khalil reached into his folder and placed the recorded call transcript, the wedding clause documents, and the archive breach summary on the table. Mr. Okonkwo distributed copies. A woman halfway down the board glanced through the first page and visibly stiffened. The heavy man who had asked the original question sat back, face drained of easy certainty. No one rushed to challenge Khalil now, because the story had changed shape. Not innocent billionaire, not helpless bride, not simple scandal, a corruption network, a coerced marriage, a chairman who had hidden too much, yes, but also a witness willing to expose his own position rather than leave a woman buried under another family lie. The silver-haired director cleared his throat. "This session will recess for internal review." No, another director said sharply, still looking at the transcript. "It will vote." That was the moment. The pivot. The room no longer debating whether Khalil was weakened, debating whether they dared stand against a truth now too public, too documented, too morally ugly to manipulate cleanly. The vote was called. Fast, cold, procedural. But the result when it came cracked through the room like light breaking hard weather. Challenge denied. Emergency authority upheld. Independent criminal cooperation initiated. Immediate disclosure review approved. And with that, the old shield of secrecy began to collapse. Not only around Khalil's enemies, around the Aphelions too. Hours later, after statements had been issued, legal teams mobilized, and the first external investigations were already moving. Amara stood once more at the tower glass. Night had taken the city. Below, Lagos glittered in fragments. Khalil approached quietly. He did not stand too close. "I won't ask for forgiveness tonight," he said. Amara looked at the city. Good. He accepted that. After a moment, she spoke again. "My father lost me long before today." Khalil said nothing. But today, she continued. "I stopped losing myself with him." That was the true ending, she realized. Not the board vote, not the scandal, not the public collapse of the family that had spent years sacrificing her in private. The true ending was this. A woman once treated as expendable had become the one person no one in the room could replace. And for now, that was enough. She turned to Khalil. "Do not lie to me again. I won't. Do not protect me through silence." A beat. "I'll try to protect you through truth." This time, when she looked at him, she did not see a poor bodyguard. She did not even see a billionaire. She saw a man who would now have to earn every inch of what came next. Good, she thought. So would she. And somewhere far below the tower, beyond the broken house of her old life, dawn had already begun preparing its return. Amara's story was never really about marrying a secret billionaire. It was about what happens when a woman who has been treated like a spare finally understands her true worth. Wealth did not save her. A man did not magically fix her pain. The truth did. The moment she stopped accepting other people's version of her life, everything changed. This is the hardest lesson many families never learn. Love without respect is only control wearing a softer face. Sacrifice is not virtue when it is demanded from one person again and again while others live without consequence. And silence is not peace when it protects injustice. Khalil also learned something painful. Good intentions do not excuse hidden truth. You cannot build real trust on strategy alone, no matter how noble your reasons seem. Truth told too late still wounds. But in the end, justice began, where honesty finally stood in the open. Betrayal was exposed. Power was forced to answer. And healing began not when Amara was chosen by a rich man, but when she chose herself. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments at what moment did Amara truly become powerful in your eyes. And if you enjoy emotional stories filled with betrayal, justice, and healing, subscribe so you don't miss the next one.